Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversations Over Coffee. Woohoo! It's been, I don't know, 15 months now that we've been doing this on Mondays. It's a long time. And here we are a year later with the president of Beth Tzedec, Debbie Rothstein. And we thought we would take this time to kind of check in and reflect a little bit. A year is a long time, and we've done a lot in the shul. Where obviously we're in the middle of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is just a couple of days away. It seems very often, though, when one looks at our Beth Tzedec calendar, you wouldn't know that there's a pandemic going on, other than the fact that we're still not yet meeting in person in large numbers. But this is a good time, as good time of any, to take a moment and reflect. So, hi, Debbie. It's always
Hello.
nice to see you.
Always good to, it's crazy because the one thing over the last 18 months is this is how I normally see you. I've seen you in person literally a handful of times. So this I'm very comfortable with. As you know, last week we hugged each other, which was a big deal. Masked,
Right.
but we hugged each other.
Right. And outside in the backyard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All the
Both
protocols.
doubly vaccinated.
Both double vaccinated.
You have to go through the checklist of
Yes.
how that happens. Let's start with the personal. How was Rosh Hashanah for you and for Michael and your family?
It was great. I reflect back on last year. My parents and my mother-in-law were in our bubble. We decided at the second lockdown or after the summer that they were going to remain in our bubble for all of our mental health. And because all of my other siblings had kids in high school. So they couldn't be with them except outside. So we actually had Rosh Hashanah last year with my parents and my mother-in-law. This year we had all my siblings. Well, one of my siblings wasn't there, but everybody else was at dinner at my parents. So we went into Rosh Hashanah on a high. And then the services were fantastic and a lot less stressful than last year. So Rosh Hashanah was great. Rosh Hashanah was really, really good.
Was there a highlight for you?
I turned to Michael. So the first day I try to go to all the services. So the first day we were in the sanctuary and I turned to Michael and we were maybe 180 in the sanctuary, as opposed to 20 last year. And I turned to him and I said, I know this isn't a lot of people, but the building feels full and my heart felt full. Just to be with people, and people were so happy to be back at shul that it was unbelievably uplifting and inspiring to be there.
What have you heard? We know that our co-religionists, our Jews, are not shy of sharing their opinions, especially if something happens that they're unhappy about. So what have you heard since Rosh Hashanah?
So poo, nothing unhappy. Everything very positive. Even before the services, even before Rosh Hashanah, I got emails from members when we sent out the e-blasts about what we were doing, from members who knew that they were going to be staying home. How surprised last year they felt with the services being so uplifting. They weren't expecting that online. And people who I know watched the services this year felt the same way. For the people in the building, we were home, right? It's been so long since we've been home. And it was fantastic. So I've heard really and truly, and I'm not just saying that because you're the rabbi, nothing but positive things.
Well, I know you better than to just say something anyway. So I mean, I've heard the same. It's really been, feedback thus far has been uniformly positive, and I would say even from those people who I know that responded to me about my remarks, and I got some, I I would say, thoughtful feedback and criticism. People disagreed with some of what I said. I'm always happy to get that because it means people were listening and they were engaged.
Absolutely.
And when somebody feels strongly enough to write about that, especially in a thoughtful way, to engage in a conversation, I appreciate that. So I consider that even that a win in that regard.
And I think people are because I think you and I approach it the same way. If a member emails me, I always respond. Sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short, depending on the comments, but all feedback is positive, even if it's negative, right? So if it means that we have to change the way we think, if it changes, like pivot slightly, it's all good.
I just heard somebody quote P.T. Barnum about that the only kind of bad publicity is no publicity.
Totally.
So the only kind of bad feedback is no feedback.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed, like, I was just reminded of that recently too. When you reflect on this last year as the president of the synagogue, what are some of the things that come most immediately to mind? What are the things that have been, really hard that we're still working through? And what are the things that when you think back, you say, wow, we really did a good job responding in that way?
I think what's hard is that we want to move at 200 miles an hour and you can't, right? We know where we need to get. And sometimes we just don't get there fast enough. And that can cause frustration, sometimes friction. So that's, you have to temper expectations. So I think that, and I'm not good at that. What has been really, really positive is the teamwork. What I admire about you so much is that you always introduced yourself as a rabbi, one of the rabbis at Beth Tzedec. You never introduced yourself as the senior rabbi, meaning you're part of the team. And yes, I'm the president, but I'm part of a team. And I have a phenomenal team. I mean, 18 months in, the executive's still meeting every other week. There's a lot of thoughtful, meaningful discussions every other week. The board is incredible. Everybody, for the most, look, you're never going to be 100% aligned, but we are as close as possible. There's no dissension. There's no anything like that. I'm actually shocked how easy that part of the job has been, because I would never have believed it, just because there's no playbook for this. We're still meeting on Zoom. I mean, you and I had a meeting in the tent. One of the, our anti-racism task force had a meeting in the tent last week. That's the first in-person meeting I've had in 18 months, which is just crazy when you think about it. And at this point, we don't know what's going to happen in the fall. We don't know. We're hoping that we're going to get to stay open and that we're not going to revert to lockdowns and stuff like that. But who knows?
I think that one of the reasons that we've been able to be so aligned as a community is that prior to the pandemic, we had already been really focusing on what business are we in? What's our, Simon Sinek was speaking yesterday.
Yeah, I heard him last night.
Launch, right? So Simon is the guru of this notion of what's your just cause, what's your why. And we hadn't been using his language for that, but we'd have essentially been doing the work that he outlines in his TED Talk and his books and his motivational speaking and so forth, that our why is to inspire and enable our community to live meaningful Jewish lives. And we do that through these 6 core values that we've like really been working hard on socializing, so that our staff, our lay leaders, our congregation, they can readily identify and hopefully name at least most of them as being, the values that drive our decision-making processes. So when we come into a crisis such as this, what changes is the delivery method, but not the just cause, not the why, not the value.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think that was what was so shocking is the not word, but surprising. We started this visioning work 8 months before, I want to say 8 months before the pandemic, 9 months before the pandemic. And, we took the strategic plan, we really streamlined our mission statement so that it wasn't a paragraph, so that it was like, the sentence that every board member, every staff member could easily bring up, and then those core values. And when the pandemic hit, I remember writing my speech for the annual meeting, which was, 2.5 months into the pandemic. And we had those values. And it was so easy to write my speech because we actually, we hit it on the head. It was so shocking to me how we were already doing the work, and that work was feeding how we were going to behave for the next 18 months.
So I want to encourage people to go see your current president's address. And I'll put the link on Facebook in a moment, but it's our Beth Tzedec All Access hub. So if you type in Beth Tzedec All Access, all one word, .org, you will be brought to the page of all the High Holy Day content. And we invite whoever's watching us to join us for Yom Kippur on our live stream. All you gotta do is enter your email in order to do that. But go and look at Debbie's her president's address, and share with us as you were thinking about that. I mean, give us some of that now. It's like, what are some of the stories that really stand out for you in terms of what is Beth Tzedec, and what is it that we've been about during this really trying period?
So, when we did our strategic plan 5 years ago, live streaming was very, very low on the priorities of the shul. It's not anything we were really considering whatsoever. And obviously, when the pandemic hit and we had to move online, and who even thought about doing programs online? I mean, but actual services. I mean, Michael was saying Kaddish at the time. He couldn't finish saying Kaddish, right? So everything moved online. The people who I heard from at the beginning were people who were homebound or infirmed, or who couldn't regularly come to services, who we weren't thinking about, and not intentionally, but now I realize how important the live stream is to maintain connection. And I think of all the values, I think every one of all 5 of our values feed into that one value of connect. So connection means more than anything. So for people who, I'm in my office, my home office right now. I've basically been in this room for 18 months between work and the shul. So I get where people are coming from. So just the fact that you can go on to Daily Minyan and see all the faces, the same way I did at breakfast when Michael was saying Kaddish in the building, right? At shul, at its services or the breakfast, or programs, or we started the small groups in the middle of a pandemic. We started the small groups, and, didn't expect it to really take off. And it was a huge success, and hundreds of people became connected intergenerationally. It's just, I'm truly humbled to be president at this time, because I think the work that we are doing, when people are isolated and feeling alone, is so incredibly important. And what I talked about, I mean, I think all summer when I'm writing my speeches, when I'm at the cottage, I try to think about what I'm going to talk about. And
I want to know about that.
Well, I don't have to write 4 sermons, but I think what happened this year, there's so many articles written about the decline of organized religion, and I can't talk about other religions. I can't even talk about Orthodox Jews or Reform Jews, because conservative Judaism is my world. So all I can say is, I think over the last 18 months, Beth Tzedec has shown how vital the synagogue is in people's lives to maintain connection to Judaism and also to each other. So that's what I really took away from this past year.
Yeah, well, it's the only Jewish community institution that deals with the entirety of the Jewish community at the same time, from the cradle to the grave.
Yeah.
And everything in between.
I mean, I remember you told us that you told me in a conversation that, the SLT performed 95 funerals over the last year.
No, that there were 91 funerals that happened either in the congregation or people that suffered loss from it. So there were 51 funerals that we ourselves officiated at, and another 42 something of family members that suffered loss, for which we supported during Shiva and Shloshim, right, and getting up from, and Pastoral Calls and so forth and so on. So yeah, I mean, there was a lot of, that was 30% higher, 30% higher exactly than a normal year.
So that's just a fraction of your job, the SLT's job, right? That's just a fraction.
Yeah, we're doing 85 pastoral calls a month. We're doing something like 150 to 200 relational or connecting calls a month. That's just our spiritual leaders. So it's not including all the volunteers that are calling people on a regular basis.
Right.
And all the chesed activity that's going on. And then, right now there's a lot of, we have I think 12 conversion students that we're working with. There's been 8 weddings that seem to have happened in the last 6 weeks. And it's not just the wedding. I know that Rabbi Friar Batson and Rabbi Friedman Cole and I, we meet 3 to 4 times with each couple for the wedding. We want to really get to know them. We've started to also meet with family members, with parents of the bride and the groom, or the partners, because we want to get to know them too. So there's just in terms of the traditional pastoral rabbinic roles, everything just seems to be, the need is greater. And, and as I spoke about on Rosh Hashanah, we used to say, we're here, call us when you need us. What's changed in the pandemic is that's been flipped around.
Yeah.
We're now calling people, and in so doing, we're learning that there's a lot more need than gets self-reported otherwise.
Look, I'll give you a perfect example. So we have the Kiddush Club that Patty and Sheldon Rotman started every week, which for me personally was a real lifeline, especially at the beginning of the pandemic when I was a mess, for lack of a better term. I talk about Raina Jolly a lot, just because I think Raina is such a perfect example of the work that we're doing. But Raina used to come to Kiddush Club and you never saw her. It was just her name because she didn't have a camera. And Yaakov came to Kiddush Club one day and he contacted her after Shabbos and said, why don't we see you? She doesn't have a camera. So he helped ensure that she got a camera. And then she joined a small group. It's all of these things. It's like everybody is proactively thinking as much as possible, because it's almost too late to be a reactive thinker. Everything is moving too fast right now.
Right. And you don't want people like Raina to be disconnected.
Exactly.
So we installed the camera. It took her 3 months to learn, to really feel comfortable about doing it. But now she's a regular in a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And we have tons and tons of stories of that. We had, we started this challah delivery thing, which is not about the challah, it's about the shmooze when the challah gets delivered. And one of the people who does the delivery was ill, and so somebody didn't get their challah, and they were like, "Where's my challah?" They were missing that shmooze, and it really upset them because of the disconnect that happened at that particular week.
So Michael's one of the delivery people, and I'll he'll be gone for 3 hours, and I'll say to him, how many
like
he
4
delivered
chalot.
5 challahs,
It's 5 chalot. It's not, we don't do contactless delivery. That's
exactly.
We're not DoorDash.
Definitely not.
We're DoorDrosh.
That's good. We should copyright that.
I think I think Camperman the Poconos called it Delit Dash. Delit Dash, right? Because Dash in Hebrew is Drishat Shalom. When you say hi to somebody, you would say, Dash LaDebbie, right? Which is an abbreviation for Drishat Shalom, give my regards, give my best to Debbie. Mm-hmm. So Camperman the Poconos, there's a lot of Jewish camps near that camp. And so there's some restaurants that come up that are kosher over the summer, and Camper Mag called their delivery system Delit Dash for that purpose. So yeah. Well, it's like Lara Roden and I, we're inventing Trail Torah. We have to make sure we get the trademark.
Yep, definitely.
The trademark on that. So Debbie, what should people know that we're thinking about and working towards for this next year? What's the agenda for Beth Tzedec in 5783? So
one of the things, I wrote it down last night. One of the things that Simon Sinek said last night was, that to have a strong community, you don't preserve what was. I love that, right? Because I think especially in the Jewish community, we so want to hold on. Look I started going to shul with my grandfather. There's certain things that of the traditions of Beth Tzedec that I love and that I never want to get rid of. But we still have to keep moving forward. And I think the main thing that we have to look at in this coming year is membership and our membership structure. Just because if we're going to truly be a relational community, and I believe that's the intention of the board and of the staff at the shul, we have to stop the language of, is shul a priority in people's lives, right? We have to stop. And I think we've gotten much better at it than we were. I know that when I was a young married person, I had some run-ins with the membership committee. It's very, very different now. But I do think I would love to get to a point, and I mean, I know this right now, it's a dream, is that we have a huge endowment fund. So everyone under 40, membership is open like to a donation or whatever they choose, what they feel they can give to the shul. I want everybody, regardless of where they are in life, to feel welcome in our shul. And finance should never be a boundary to entry, which for the most part it isn't. But we have to walk the walk completely.
Yeah, well, look, we, as you and I have spoken many times before, and certainly as I witnessed when I was the CEO of USCJ, of United Synagogue Conservative Judaism, the membership model of the 19th century, which we are still using, just doesn't make sense in the behavioral patterns of the 21st century.
Right.
And that's where the challenge is. So we have to, and Simon talked about this. You're right. He said that all organizations evolve. If you don't evolve, if your just cause isn't resilient and helps keeping you, push yourself forward, all you're doing is preserving rather than creating.
And he also said it's an opportunity to let things go.
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's also Otto Scharmer in Theory U, which I've shared with you. The notion that you have to observe in order to understand where you're presencing, where you can be in the present and sense the emerging future. And in order to move towards the emerging future, you have to figure out what you have to let go of in order to make space for what is new and creative.
Right.
And so membership still, even when we talk about membership, we're still talking about it as a club. And what we want the synagogue to be is people's just cause. Why are you engaged with Beth Tzedec? Because Beth Tzedec helps you and helps our community experience what it means to live a meaningful Jewish life. And you care enough about it that you want to make sure that it is sustainable and viable. That means volunteerism. That means financial contributions. That means, participating in good governance and making sure that the synagogue has a pipeline of leaders to ensure it into the future. That becomes a very different conversation than the conversation of membership and, we have to get away from synagogue to talk about, well, synagogue does this, this, and this, and this. And we have to be telling those stories about Reina. We have to tell those stories about Larry, as I did. We have to tell those stories about Debbie and Michael and whoever.
It's the other thing that Simon Sinek said last night was you have to tell people what you believe. And I think we're doing a pretty good job at that. And I think we have to get away from this notion that shul membership is about getting a ticket to the high holidays. We always say to people, we're open 365 days a year. Maybe they didn't even realize that. I mean, obviously they do, but don't even think about that. We have been literally open 24/7 for 18 months online. And when you see the attendance at Daily Minyan, when you see the attendance at programs, and it's so much higher than it was in person, people are looking for that connection to each other, as I said before, to each other and to being Jewish, right? Like it's shul is about so much more than congregating on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It is so much more to me personally. To me, there is the history, there is being with my grandfather and my sister and that junior congregation and all that stuff that was when I was a kid. But it's been also my marriage with Michael at the shul. So our relationship with others that we've formed at the shul, my kids, there's so much more than just Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur.
To look at it from a historical perspective, the synagogue has been the most successful means of the mass transmittal of Jewish identity, content, practice, spirituality for the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
It is still the institution to which the largest numbers or the largest segments of the Jewish population belong to when compared to any other Jewish communal organization. People belong to a synagogue more than they do to any other Jewish communal organization. And though we are in a moment of significant transition and change, I believe that the synagogue still has the capacity to reimagine itself, to renew itself, to continue to play that role. It just has to do so in, as you said, it has to do so in ways that is people focused, that is just cause focused, that's about service to God, to Torah, to the Jewish people, to the world in general. And it has to invite people in to support it in ways that are less transactional and more inspirational.
Absolutely.
And that's for everyone that's watching, that's where Beth Tzedec's going. If we had figured it all out, we'd be doing it all already. But here's an invitation. If you have ideas, if you want to roll up your sleeves with Debbie and me and others, and you want us to think freely and widely about how we might experiment in moving from here to there, let us know.
So I want to tell you a good quote, because my sister Jackie and I, we were, because that I swore I would never do a third year as president. So, but that was pre-pandemic. So my sister was, we were walking. It was the first time that we really had some quality time alone together. And so she said to me, why did you decide to do it? And I said, one, it's not fair to Patty, who's following me, to leave in the middle when the work's not done and the pandemic's not over. But I kind of felt like I was the right person at the right time. And so she sent me this quote that I think is very, it applies to the shul as well. It's an Arlen Hamilton quote, and it's, "Be yourself so that the people looking for you can find you." And I think that's what we've been doing at Beth Tzedec for the last 18 months. Isn't that a great quote? I have it on my computer now. I have sticky notes all over my computer.
That's really wonderful. And that's a great way to conclude today's conversation over coffee. Be yourself so the people that are looking for you can find you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank
as
you.
always, for your leadership and for your friendship. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We want to wish you a Gamar Chatima Tova. Be sure to join us for Kol Nidre in the sanctuary, in the mezzanine. We have a short and sweet service that'll be taking place over Yom Kippur in the tent out in the parking lot for those that are pre-registered. And then there's an online version that will be available as well. Kol Nidre, Yom Kippur this week, and then of course in the following weeks, join us for Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah. And then we get to the rabbi's favorite holiday, Mar Cheshvan, the beginning of Rosh Chodesh, or the Chodesh Cheshvan, where there are no Jewish holidays. I want to thank everyone for being here. I wish you again, Gamar Chatima Tova. Have a happy and a healthy and a sweet new year. May we all be inscribed for life.
Amen.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us.